Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Film Foundations, the collaborative show between Weirding Way Media and someone's favorite production. I'm your co-host, Chris Dashew, from the Culture Cast over at Weirding Way Media.
And I'm your co-host, Ryan Verrill, from the Disconnected of Someone's Favorite Productions.
On this show, we ask and answer 4 questions about a given topic that is surrounding either an actor, director, franchise, or microgenre. Our job is to entice you to broaden your horizons on film, to encourage you to travel down film tangents, which we will also be going on, and side roads that you may have never traveled down otherwise. On this episode, we have no guest. It is just Ryan and I, and we will be talking about a franchise that is very near and dear to my heart because I'm the one who picked the topic for this episode. So that's the sausage-making part of this, guys. We go back and forth picking the things that we want to do. Shocking, I know. It's almost like the best content comes from when you're really motivated to talk about something, which is the way our guests feel, I would assume, given that they're always picking the things that they want.
I would hope they feel that way.
I mean, me too. I mean, it sure seems like it. I mean, geez, all sorts of topics we're already covering, and people are just waxing poetically about it. I'd like to throw my hat in the ring to wax poetically about the Alien franchise. Maybe not all of them, but give me a moment to wax poetically about Alien 1 through 3.5 of 4, and then some other things added in. But on this episode of Film... Yeah, he's laughing already. On this episode of Film Foundations, we are going to be covering the Alien franchise, which, as it stands right now, I will say that, and I'm not going to say when this is being recorded, but we are pre-Romulus at this moment in time, PR. The films, as they are right now, are Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Prometheus, Alien Covenant, Alien vs. Predator, and Alien vs. Predator Requiem are all up for debate and are all fair game on this episode of Film Foundations. No, we will not be talking about Predator or Predators or Prey or any of those movies. It's almost like they probably deserve their own episode.
Slight correction. The movie, I believe, is actually called Aliens versus Predators Requiem.
Wow.
Or Aliens versus Predator Requiem. I only say that because I got excited the first time I heard about that and thought, are they going to take some aspect of Aliens and make that a Predator movie somehow? No. And no, they didn't.
They went out of their way to title it that way, and yet they didn't do it. So why do it? Yeah. Well, I guess there were multiple aliens, no, never mind. Not even worth addressing, because in Alien versus Predator, there are a lot of aren't there a lot of
right.
aliens? Okay.
Yeah. More than one,
which technically means alien. So yeah, on this episode of Film Foundations, we'll be covering all those movies, but let's talk a little bit broadly about them. So Alien 1 comes out in 1979. It is a film that is very near and dear to my heart. It is written by one of, if not my favorite, screenwriter. He who does not get enough credit, but boy, he was an ornery one. Father Malone would agree with me. Dan O'Bannon, who I am a huge fan of. If you ask me what my favorite zombie movie is, it's probably the one that he wrote for a whole host of reasons. But for me, Dan O'Bannon and Ron Shusett, obviously, but Dan O'Bannon is the foundational piece of all of this through which everything else is built, and the good and the bad. Because, ladies and gentlemen, Alien, and again, maybe not even Aliens, if you're the person who doesn't like Aliens, I actually understand. I mean, if you were expecting it to be Alien and you watched Aliens, you were probably massively disappointed given how much of a thing Alien is now. I mean, Alien was successful then too, but I mean, again, to go from 79 to 86, the kind of movie that's being made in 79 is not the kind of movie being made in 86.
Nope.
And that's because of the person who makes that and writes that. His movies just came out on 4K, ladies and gentlemen. I believe.
Well, now you've dated it.
I said they have come out. They have come out on Blu-ray and 4K. I didn't say not like it was recently or anything. But James Cameron takes it in an interesting direction with Aliens and broadens the universe in one way, but doesn't do much in another, which is... So the premise of Alien, at least the original, and I would say more or less the entire series as a whole, is you have a group of people who are pitted against a organic life form who is almost the perfect organism. At least that's what Ian Holm says in the first movie. Okay. Now, is it on a spaceship? Is it on a planet? Is it on a bigger spaceship? Is it on a smaller planet? Is it on another spaceship? Or, I mean, it's always on either a spaceship or a planet. There is very little in between, unless we're talking about Alien versus Predator, and then we're talking about it being on Earth for the first time ever twice.
Which is still on a spaceship or a planet.
Right. I guess I should reiterate, places that aren't Earth. This series, the promise of Alien 3 was that it was going to be on Earth. That was never made good on. There were literally promotional material for Alien 3 about it taking place on Earth. But they never got there. So the original film follows the character of Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, who is in every one of the original 4 films, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. And throughout the films, she becomes, I think, for me, one of the most important female actors in terms of genre filmmaking, period. And on top of that, it's similar to horror franchises in a way that's kind of interesting, because in a lot of ways, Alien starts out as a horror franchise and then really leans into the sci-fi, and then tries to bring it back to horror, and then really leans into the sci-fi, and then full-on just throws its body against the wall with sci-fi, with Prometheus. And then Covenant kind of comes back to horror and body horror a little. Romulus, Fede Alvarez's involvement means we're probably going to get a mix of both, I hope. That's my hope, given what he has done in the past. But Alien, for me, and like the series as it stands, is alternating horror and sci-fi movies of varying degrees of quality. I think the first 2 movies are pretty rad. The third movie has some moments. It's unfortunate who that movie's directed by, given where he is now, and we'll talk all about that when we get into the questions. But Alien Resurrection has some fun points. It has Ron Perlman in it, but then you get into this self-serious nature of the franchise. It kind of becomes an IP. I mean, there was a time and a place where you could make a Hellraiser movie that wasn't originally a Hellraiser movie with a slap Pinhead on it. And hey, look, everybody, Doug Bradley's got another check waiting for it. That's not a bad thing. Alien never became that. I felt like Alien was too big of a franchise to get bogged down in that. It was and is still a prestige franchise. So we had such a long time in between Alien movies that it's kind of now become a very different thing. And I think it's a little unfair to compare all the movies, but I think that the original movies compare closer to the newer things than they do to the later movies. I'm talking the original Alien sets the tone and stage for everything that comes in the future. Covenant and Romulus and Prometheus, they're not action movies. Aliens is such a thing that's such its own thing that I'm really excited to talk more with you about it, because for me, like I said in this kind of just brief overview, Alien is a franchise that has horror elements and only really ever commits to the horror movie 2-3 times. But it's a sci-fi thing throughout, but it only ever commits to the action thing. And the whole of the Aliens without Predators, I don't think any of them are an action movie as much as Aliens is, but Alien versus Predator is kind of an action movie, and Aliens, as you mentioned, versus Predator Requiem is also kind of an action movie, if you can see what's going on, given the problems with that movie are well known, how poorly lit it was, apparently. But I'm kind of curious, what's your kind of experience and history with the Alien franchise?
Oh, man. So, again, another look at the sausage being made. We have not really discussed this at all. So I'm very happy to get into this finally. So some overarching thoughts about all of this. First off, you bring up the fact that it's still a prestige franchise. I agree fully. But also, the fact that that's been going on for now 45 years, that's very impressive. That is not something that you would expect for a franchise that was made by Ridley Scott in 1979.
Right? It's kind of, there's something there's so fucking weird about it. That's the only thing I can say. Like, Predator doesn't feel that way. Predator was an Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. Like, sure, it was an action movie. Like, Alien, like, it's so weird to me. Like, that it caught on as hard as it did, and it still has, and it's still, I mean, we mentioned it, but like, there's a whole thing that's not the movies. More has happened outside of the movies than has happened in the movie.
Yeah, and actually, you just brought up the next thing I was going to really hit on here is it doesn't really compare with Predator. I personally have always viewed this more in line with the Terminator franchise, and That's funny to talk about because, you know, Cameron's involved in both of them. However, the thing that is so interesting is that when you compare Terminator and Alien, the first film for both franchises is basically a slasher. The second film, not even just horror. Like, you break down,
right.
There's an actual slasher narrative to both of them. Then the second film, they have like slasher elements, but it's more focused on action film for both of those second entries. And then after that, they all seem to go downhill. No matter who's directing them, who's writing them, they're all just wishing that they could be those first two films, it feels like.
I kind of wish we were doing Terminator at some point. Like, I wish when we're done with this, we could just do that. Because, man, I have some real strong opinions about Terminator. I mean, I have strong opinions on Alien, but I feel like for me, here's a little taste of that conversation. That's going to be a hard conversation to have any positive things to say for a long stretch of movies.
Yep.
Back me up on this one, Mick G. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh, yeah.
Terminator Salvation is a movie that there's only one thing memorable, and it has nothing to do with at all.
And that's what's so hard to talk about that franchise, because literally the first movie is great. The second movie is arguably one of the best movies of all time.
Right.
We don't need to talk about anything else. That's it. Just cut off the conversation.
Yeah. And look, that's the funny thing. I think for Alien, there is more to be mined. I think Alien's demise has not, the reports of Alien's demise are grossly over-exaggerated. I don't think Alien is in as bad of a shape as Terminator. Terminator is a franchise that's like dead, essentially. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's a dead franchise, right? Like, it's not only been shot and killed, it's been resurrected and shot and killed again just to prove a point. To the point where, I mean, look, you've mentioned James Cameron. I want to get out in front of this before we get too far down the road. I am not a fan of James Cameron for the most part. I don't like most of the things that he's done because at this point, the stuff that he's doing is to prove a point, and it's not really, I know. I would say the last good thing that he made that I enjoyed, and look, say what you will about me and the person that I am, is that movie. Yes, it's True Lies. And look, that movie has its problems. It's grossly anti-Muslim. Like, it's hard to find a movie more anti-Islam than True Lies. They cast every single brown-looking or brown-adjacent actor in Hollywood and said, hey, look vaguely menacing because you're going to play a Muslim terrorist. Tia Carrera is involved in that.
Christopher Statue, how dare you?
I know. I love that movie, though. That's the problem. That movie has one of the best non-James Bond openings of a movie ever, and it's literally them just ripping off Goldfinger. They just saw Goldfinger and said, wouldn't it be cool if we could have Schwarzenegger do it? Literally, he does. But that's the thing. For me, James Cameron, I like everything he's done pre-Titanic. Past Titanic, it's just not for me, dog. Like, at all. And I'm not even a big fan of The Abyss, but I can't take away The Abyss because without The Abyss, there's no Terminator 2 Judgment Day. There is no T-1000 because that's where the technology... It's like saying, like we talked about Peter Jackson, and I didn't mention it there, but I'll mention it here. Without the Frighteners, there is no Lord of the Rings for a whole host of reasons. And one of them is I think I did mention it, the design of the ring wraiths literally comes from the Fright. And it's one of the best design choices that they've made in any of those movies is the ring wraiths. They're arguably second or third most iconic thing from those movies. James Cameron, for me, is someone who, similar to Peter Jackson, but unlike Peter Jackson, the things he's working on now I don't have any interest in. Because they all seem to be very self-serving. And I don't think anybody would argue. He's so much invested in pushing the technology of film forward. And when we get into the movie that we're going to talk about with him, that for me is a big reason that I like that movie. And that's a movie that I think is worth talking about. And that's the other thing, we kind of haven't mentioned it, and I don't think beyond the first movie or the second movie, it's really a thing. The amount of pushing the envelope on what can be done practically in Aliens is because of James Cameron. I'm not saying Ridley Scott didn't contribute to that in the first movie. Ridley Scott contributed something differently. But when you get a James Cameron, it's his thing. That's his thing. I mean, he sounds like a nightmare to work with, but at the same time, so does Tarantino, who doesn't allow you to have phones on the set. I don't disagree with it. I get it. You're there to be a fucking actor, so let's do the goddamn thing. And he's there to be the director, and he's going to do the goddamn thing. I get it. And he's kind of not gotten a bad rap for it, but you don't make friends being that guy in Hollywood. And I get it.
Right.
And that's the thing. You don't get a movie like Aliens without someone who knows what they're fucking doing and knows what they want. Just like you don't get a movie like Terminator or Terminator 2. Because, like you said, those are all the way through a James Cameron. Which is why, for me, like you said, Aliens, Alien 3 and Resurrection, they cop from those other movies. But nobody's been able to do the Colonial Marines right since James Cameron. either in movie form, because they've never really attempted, or in video game form outside of the original AVP computer games, because I don't know if anybody else plays video games, but Aliens versus Predator, Aliens Colonial Marines is widely considered to be one of the worst games ever made, and this ding-dong here bought it on the day it came out. That's how much I like this franchise, is I'm willing to bite that bullet and then find out later, oh, you own one of the worst games ever made. And we're still waiting for a good Alien anything to come out. Like, and that's the thing, to your point, Alien is not as dead as Terminator, but it has similar problems, which is the later things are so hard to recommend that the things that came out a long time ago, it's like, you know, they're not doing Aliens, so what does it matter if you watch the new stuff? They're doing their own thing. Like, the thing that followed Alien is good, but the thing that followed Aliens isn't good. Maybe I should stop watching there. I don't agree with that sentiment, but I could see where someone would come at it.
So my history, like I was getting at, is I've seen the first one many times. I was shown this movie very, very young. It was probably like the third or fourth horror movie I was ever shown. My parents were a big fan of this one, and I fell in love with it immediately. I was taken by the idea of space being scary, and the biggest thing is the practical effects in that first Alien movie are wild. Like, if you're not ready for it, first off, like, seeing these glowing eggs is just interesting. And then seeing the chest bursting, obviously, that's like, that will traumatize somebody that's very young.
It still hits. Like, I saw Alien, I rewatched it, like, over the weekend. Man, that scene still, like, there's part of it that doesn't work as well as it used to. When the alien runs away and it's clearly just like a little puppet on a rod in the table. It always looks kind of cheap. This makes me think of Spaceballs. Because they kind of did the same thing in Spaceballs, but it looks funny in Spaceballs. Yep. In Alien, you're not supposed to laugh. But, man, I don't think there's anything better than, like, the last 2/3 of that movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. And to your point, like, it's almost, you can rewatch it and take something away from it different every time. Like you mentioned, it looks cool because that's H.R. Giger, baby. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. Like, that alone, like, come on, you got Giger involved in your thing.
So yeah, I ingested that very early. I watched Aliens multiple times when I was younger. Probably a little less than the first one because I didn't get on the Cameron train, like, where I loved most of his stuff until a little later in life. And to defend that, like you did a little bit, I am all aboard the Cameron train, at least up through Titanic. Obviously he did some random ass things in between Titanic and Avatar. I'm not all aboard the Avatar train, but everything else, like, I am all about True Lies. I'm all about The Abyss. I think Titanic is a masterpiece. Completely all for all of those. But when I first saw Aliens when I was younger, it was just, this action is rad. It's so well done. It's space done in a way that is exciting, and that it's exciting in a way that is on top of the frontier of space, which is incredible. And then past that, I watched the third one once or twice. It's been a very long time. We probably should say his name at this point. Like, I'm still mystified that the first three films in this series are directed by Ridley Scott, then James Cameron, and then Fincher. Like, any other franchise would be begging for that type of pedigree to start off the franchise.
But it's David Fincher at a time where he's not David Fincher of now. I mean, it's unfortunate because we will do an episode about David Fincher, and nobody's going to mention. There's no way. It'll get mentioned in the, this is the movie David Fincher has disavowed, the same way David Lynch disavowed Dune.
Right.
Until he just recently brought it back up and was like, I'd love to do it again. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's very weird to me. It'd be like David Fincher coming out tomorrow and be like, I want to direct the next Alien film. Be like, wait a second. Like, you've said that this is like the thing you want to keep at arm's length. It's mind-blowing. It is really mind-blowing to me to have David Fincher, 92 David Fincher directing Alien 3.
This led into 7. Like, isn't that wild?
I know. I mean, this is where David Fincher, like, what's funny is Alien 3 is where David Fincher becomes David Fincher. Because he goes, I am literally never doing that again. That's why David Fincher hasn't worked in, say it with me, everybody, the MCU. I mean, that's why directors like him don't work with studios anymore, the same way that they used to, because that's what happens. I mean, he has worked in the studio system, but it's very different. And he's given a very wide berth, and he's also given a lot of control, clearly, because I think he's the kind of person who doesn't need it, but definitely benefits from it. So I'm excited when we do an episode on him, but it is wild to me how bad the movie is given who directed it.
Yeah. So the last part of this, which is why this is your episode, I don't think I've ever seen Alien Resurrection, and I know I've never seen Prometheus or Covenant. So I have a lot to learn on that front. I have a lot to be introduced to tonight. I'm excited for it, but that all leads into our very first question, which this is not a given answer. So I'm very curious to what you're going to say. Mr. Stashew, to answer question 1, what do you think is the foundational title in the Aliens franchise?
I did hem and haw with myself for a while about the answer to this question, and I'll tell you why. There's part of me that wanted to be a cheeky piece of shit and pick the one that I think has aged better in terms of more recently, and also in terms of I think it would get people in the door faster because it leans on common tropes of now, current modern cinema, less cinema of the 70s and 80s. And I have no problem with cinema of the 70s and 80s. I'm not besmirching it. I'm just mentioning the expectations of a current film-going audience, okay?
Right.
Don't roast me over the fire yet, though I taste delicious. I wanted to say Prometheus so fucking badly, you have no idea.
As an entry point to the Aliens franchise.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I could explain it if you'd like. I will give a defense as to why it could be my answer. I think the correct answer, in all honesty, is Alien. But I will tell you why I believe I could make a case for Prometheus, and I will right now.
By all means.
Okay, so Alien, right? That's the first movie chronologically in the franchise, technically, up until the point Prometheus comes. Prometheus is a film that you've mentioned you haven't seen it. For those of you that have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But the movie does not feature aliens in the way that aliens are portrayed throughout any other point in the series. Literally. Alien Covenant actually takes the problems of Prometheus, quote unquote, the problems that some people had. And look, I'm not sitting here and saying if you go into a movie that looks like, smells like, walks like an alien movie, you shouldn't expect to see a xenomorph popping out of somebody's fucking chest or somebody dying in a graphic way to an alien double mouth killing them in the skull. I'm not saying that that's not an expectation. I'm saying I understand why it's an expectation. But at the same time, I also think that sometimes people's expectations are just to see the same fucking thing again. And you can go watch Alien. It still exists. The release of Prometheus did not negate the existence of Alien. It's a hard thing for some people to stomach, man. Like, it bugs the shit out of me because it's like, okay, Anchorman 2, for example. Does Anchorman 2 diminish the enjoyment of Anchorman 1? Yes and no. Should it? No. Does it? Yes. And that's why I mentioned Prometheus here and compare it to Anchorman, because Anchorman 1, that film is lessened because there's a second movie that is wildly all over the place tonally and not funny for the most part. It lessens the quality of the original film. In this case, Alien Covenant lessens the quality of Prometheus because they went, oh, wait, people didn't like that there wasn't an alien, specifically a xenomorph that looked like everything we've seen with the glowing eggs, like you mentioned, and the face huggers. So we got to give it to them. And not only do they give it to us, they essentially just remake Alien. And not in a way that feels genuine. It feels very phoned in. And there's a CGI xenomorph jumping around, and Danny McBride is in the movie for God knows what reason. And they waste, what is her name? Catherine Waterston, Sam Waterston's daughter. They waste her time, and she's a great actress who just happens to be in some of the worst franchise movies of the last decade. Looking at you, Fantastic Beasts, and where to not find the money with that franchise. And I mean, it sounds like a sure thing to be in a Harry Potter franchise until it's not a sure thing. And that's the thing with Alien. Alien Covenant was supposed to be a sure thing, and it wasn't. It was not. It did not make the money they wanted. It did not make anything the way that they wanted. Prometheus actually, I believe, if memory serves, Prometheus actually made a lot of money. I don't think Covenant made as much money for a whole host of reasons. One of those reasons is it's not a very good movie because it's literally just Alien. And that's why I mentioned Prometheus. It's like the one time anybody's really done anything vastly different with the franchise. John Spates and Damon Lindelof, say what you will about Damon Lindelof. Plenty of other people have. I won't. I get it. I understand people's problems with him. I don't have those problems. And John Spates has written several things that people like. I alluded to Dune earlier. He wrote both treatments of Dune and Dune Part 2. He also wrote The Mummy. So, take that with what you will. He also wrote, again, Doctor Strange, which I think the original Doctor Strange is a relatively well-received movie by most people. The second one, not so much, maybe. But for me, Prometheus is a movie that I'm oddly kind of not obsessed with, but it's such an intriguement to the movie for me. I'm so intrigued by a movie that, for all intents and purposes, if it's not an alien movie, everybody would love it. But because it's an alien movie, even though they said it's not an alien, even though it is an alien movie, because they have Weyland-Yutani, and they have Peter Weyland, and they have Michael Fassbender in the good version of the role, not the one that becomes... when we say that David fingers himself in the second movie, it's not nearly as exciting as it sounds. It's him playing a flute with a version of himself. It's just, again, Alien Covenant is like, you liked Michael Fassbender in the first movie, so we're going to give you like all Michael Fassbender in the second. You didn't like that there wasn't an alien in the first movie, so here's an alien in the second movie. Like, reactionary cinema is fine, but at the same time, we're seeing what happens when you fuck up franchises all the time. David Gordon Green, I'm done doing The Exorcist. Oh, thank God they didn't spend $400 million on it. It to me is all the same kind of problem here, which is there should be a genuine love for the franchise if you're going to get involved with having anything to do with it now, because everybody who loves it is either going to love it because you made something that's similar, or they're going to hate it because you did something different. And if you can justify why you did something different, most of the time the fans are going to appreciate you for it. However, if you do something different and tell the fans to go fuck themselves, like Rian Johnson did with Star Wars, you're going to get the hate that I'm not going to say deserve, but don't expect people who have loved something, like you said, since 40, 50 years ago, to go, oh, I'm so glad you changed the thing that I love. Like I said right at the beginning of this rant, Alien still exists. You can still go watch it. And you can watch it in 4K, I'm assuming, right? See?
Absolutely.
And that's my point. But for me, Alien, to get to the point where I answer the better part of the question, I don't think I have to tell anybody who is listening that knows what Alien is all about, why Alien is such a good movie and why it's so important. But given that you're here because you may not have seen Alien or you want to learn more about it, the reason Alien is such a good movie is because it is a combination, and a good movie and a foundational piece, and the most important foundational piece. It sets the tone for what the universe is going to be, which is a lived-in space universe, which is very similar to another movie that came out around that time called Star Wars. But then it also does exactly what you said, which is it injects a horror element that we're not saying that horror movies in the sci-fi world didn't exist, but it didn't exist like this. They didn't exist like this. And I'm talking about the level of violence. Alien is a pretty violent movie. It's a pretty gory movie, but not really, because there's like one scene, that's it.
Right.
It's it. I mean, it's a shockingly bloodless movie, really. Like, and I would say the second most grotesque scene is grotesque because it's milk coming out of the guy's mouth, not blood. And that's its whole own thing. But Alien, again, like, it also sets the design of the creature in such a way that it is one of the most iconic aliens of anything, because it forced H.R. Giger to make something that was marketable to children, which I want to be in that room when they're like H.R. Giger making kids' toys. Like, I mean, again, his original books of artwork were so sexual and phallic, and in Alien, like, the design, it comes through. All those passages are so Giger. And that's the thing, like, when you have such a unique and distinct movie like the first one that sets the tone for the style of the universe and the expectations and the way things kind of operate within the universe. I mean, Alien's a perfect movie. That's the reality. Alien is a perfect movie, and it being a perfect movie, it negates any other answer on this list, because none of these movies are perfect. Even Aliens is a good movie, but Aliens is not perfect in the way Alien. Alien is a seminal film that, like, if you made just Alien in your career as a filmmaker, you'd be happy. You could die happy if all you ever made was Alien and then never made anything else. Ridley Scott made Alien and Blade Runner. I would contend he hasn't made a whole lot of good things otherwise since. That's my personal feelings on Ridley Scott. I just find him to be kind of a cigar-chomping guy who seems a little abrasive, which is fine. I think for me, he is a very interesting part of this, because so much of this also comes from him and what he wanted to do. So a lot of what Ridley Scott is at the time is part of Alien. And that helps drive where this went. And again, for me, Dan O'Bannon is one of, if not my favorite screenwriters. So that puts just one more check mark in the column of Alien, because it's written by Dan.
Yeah, good call.
It's not any surprise, is it?
Well, If it's my turn to answer the question, so the reason I said what I said, because I wasn't getting at that you could have said Prometheus and that would have been edgy or exciting. I was getting at, I think there's two perfectly good entry points for this franchise, and that's the first two films. And to go across with what you just said, I do think Alien is a better film. I do think Alien is a literal perfect film. I don't think there's anything you take away or need to add to the movie, and therefore it is a perfect film. But if you're rating that and that is 100, to me, Aliens is like a 98. I've always viewed them as very close. It's just slightly behind it. It's also just a very different genre film. And that is actually why I think Aliens is the better choice here, because I think the fact that it is not genre focused in terms of horror, and the isolation is more intense in the first film than in Aliens. And the other funny thing is, yes, they set up the lore and the design and all that backstory and all that stuff. The first part of Aliens is Ridley recounting everything that happened in the first movie, basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Aliens tells that first story, and you get it in a way that is action-oriented, which tends to lean towards more mainstream audiences. So if you're somebody that's brand new to this franchise, I think that might be an easier first watch. Is it the best first watch? I mean, that could be argued. I think it's an easier one, but if you're going to do it, you may as well just watch the first two back-to-back.
Yeah, I think that's actually the right answer. And the other thing that I will mention, I don't think the alien is ever scary again outside of it. And that's because of Alien. Because once you can see that one just dies by being shot a couple times,
right,
it's not the same as in the first movie, Ripley having to do literally everything short of, well, she does literally everything and then some to get rid of the alien. And that's the thing. I don't even want to spoil it, because that's, we're not here to spoil these movies. There's no way you've never heard of the chest burster. See, Jesus Christ, that's impossible. But you might not know the plot of the first movie, and I think actually not knowing the plot of the first movie is beneficial, because you get to meet, learn, and like the characters before the shit hits the fan. That's the other thing. Alien compared to Aliens, so much slower. It takes an hour to get to the point in Alien where pretty much anything is actually happening.
Absolutely. And the thing with the plot of the Alien movie, funny enough, even if you haven't seen it, you've seen it. You just don't know yet, because it's the exact same plot in like 45 other movies, because it is a perfect plot to go through. There's so many movies that, I mean, Underwater, which I love with Kristen Stewart, is literally the movie Alien, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, Alien as an idea is not really novel, but it's the way through which the alien gets on the ship that is the novel thing. And I believe Ron Shusett in The Beast Within, which is the first full-length feature documentary on the Alien quadrilogy. This is me flexing my physical media knowledge, which I have seen one too many times. He says, what happened if the alien fucks him?
Right.
And that's literally what this is. I mean, it's an alien fucking your face with its long penis, and because the facehugger has like a tube that it shoots down your
very phallus thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I mentioned H.R. Giger. Everything in Alien looks like a dick or a vagina for a reason, because that's what H.R. Giger,
or at least a codpiece.
Yeah, I mean, the alien's head looks like a penis, like from the pretty much the top of the head back. But the alien is never scary in anything else. Like, period.
Right.
The mystique of the alien is drawn out of it in Aliens, because now there's hundreds.
They're fallible.
Yeah. And for me, it's not that I'm not a fan of that, but like you said, it's such a different thing that it is almost it's unfair to compare them, because they're not the same kind of, like you said, Terminator and Terminator 2, not the same kind of movie. Same idea, same premise, theoretic, but take a step to the right in Terminator 2, and now Arnold's the good guy. In Alien, it's, the aliens actually really aren't that scary. It's just the volume of the aliens.
Right.
Yeah, because there have to be, if one is not scary, then what is scary? Hundreds of thousands. Which, again, they never make good on the promise on, but they can't at the time.
Well, and it's falling prey to the pressures of a sequel, too. Oh, you had an alien in the first one? Well, what happens if you have 1,000 aliens? Wah, ha, ha, ha.
Right. And it's like, I would say Aliens is the only time that ever really worked, which was, filling the screen with as many aliens in, stuntmen in suits as you could find. That's the other thing. Alien and Aliens are both fantastic examples of physical and practical effects.
Yeah.
I mean, like Alien 3 is too, and so is Resurrection, because they're still being made at a time and a place where CGI is not a thing. But Prometheus, heavy with the CGI. to the point where people were really upset about it. But at the same time, I actually think Prometheus has a lot of practical effects and a lot of really interesting and well done stuff that, again, like you said, maybe Prometheus isn't the right answer, Alien and Aliens is, but Prometheus is the answer if you want to see, I think you could get away with watching Prometheus before Alien. And I think it would still make sense. I think Prometheus does stand alone as its own thing enough, because there is no xenomorph in that movie. Not recognizable the way that we see it, moment one, it jumps out of John Hurt's chest.
Right. This is probably a good time to transition into the second question, which I will fully admit here, I'm not qualified on this franchise to answer the second question. So this will all be about you. And as we get to this one, the question, of course, is always, can you recommend a lesser known gem within the subject that might be not the perfect first time watch for somebody new to it, but also a good movie in the franchise?
If I hadn't already gone on a tangent about Prometheus, which I have, I would theoretically, it was close to being my answer, but the thing I ended up going with on this is Alien Resurrection. And that's because it's just like, it's kind of just this dumb, fun movie. It has a sense of fun to it that feels like Aliens meets Alien. So you have, the plot's dumb. Let's not talk about the plot. Let's talk about everything but the plot. You have Sigourney Weaver, you have Winona Ryder, you have Ron Perlman, you have, the guy with the really hairy chest. God, he was in Commando. He's the villain. He's the secondary villain in Commando.
In Prometheus?
No. He's
Which one are we talking about?
He's in Alien Resurrection. Dan Hedaya. Like I said, a really hairy guy. And so he's in there. I mean, there's plenty of and Brad Dourif's in there. Do I need to sell anybody on this more? Like, there are people that I think people like in the movie.
Right.
There are some fun and novel kills, including one with Leland Orser from, speaking of Seven, that I will leave for people to go and watch because I think it's one of the most novel ways to kill someone within the Alien universe. But it has a pretty good cast. I mean, again, I like Ron Perlman a lot. I like Winona Ryder a lot. Sigourney Weaver, as far as I'm concerned, can do no wrong. And Alien Resurrection is fun. Alien 3 is not fun. Alien 3 is like so self-serious and just it's a drag for a lot of reasons, but it's a drag primarily because it's not fun. It fucks up the story so much on its own. Like, it undoes Aliens in a way that, like, even I have a hard time being like, that was a good idea. But Alien Resurrection for me is kind of like the dumb entry into the franchise, but in a fun way. Like, I don't expect much when I sit down with Alien Resurrection. I expect some things that I already know I'm going to get, and then I can always kind of be impressed by some of the practical effects, especially the alien newborn at the end of the movie, which I think is a really fun, bad character design, but a fun concept. But I mean, I think most people could sit down with Alien Resurrection and have a halfway decent time because it is the least serious of all of the movies, other than the AVP movies. And that's the thing, like, we didn't mention the AVP movies here because I think they're better left for another answer. What's so important about them? But I mean, Alien versus Predator, I think, might be the 1B here. It's dumb and fun. If you're a Predator fan, that's the one you should watch. If you're looking for something else to watch, you should watch Alien, Aliens, and then jump to Alien versus Predator. If you're trying to educate yourself, but then jump into it at the crossroads of the franchise. But yeah, Alien Resurrection is a fun, dumb movie that has a good amount of well-regarded character actors who turn in good performances because they know what they're there for, and they get to be in an Alien movie. So fuck yeah. Brad Dourif and Ron Perlman are an Alien movie. An Alien movie. That, if that doesn't excite you, I mean, as someone who likes to watch movies, like, Ron Perlman is a great character actor, and him getting to be in an ensemble cast in an Alien movie.
Well said.
Right. Like that. See, like, you're excited now. You want to go watch it. I can tell. Maybe.
I mean, I've wanted to watch Resurrections for quite some time, and this is one of those things that, other than the AVP films, I've wanted to do a rewatch of the whole franchise, and so I'm considering doing it leading up to Romulus and just go through all of them with the wife, because she's never seen, I don't think she's ever even seen Aliens. I've shown her Alien like 3 times, so watching all of them would be fun.
Yeah. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on a Prometheus or Covenant, because, like, they're so modern films, but, like, trying to be Alien, which is so weird to me. Like, yeah.
Well, and again, it's a 46-year-old franchise about aliens that you never would have expected would have gone this long. Like, it's extremely surprising that we're still getting sequels, and that, there's before the end of 2024, we're going to have a brand new movie that we can rewatch the entire franchise before. That's very weird.
Right. And, like that's, again, there aren't a lot of movies like that. There's Predator, there's Terminator, but so many of the other ones never made, RoboCop never really made it out. I don't consider.
There's 3 sequels, a remake, and a TV show. Come on.
But none of them are good.
RoboCop 2 is not terrible.
But it's not very good either. It's not, it's the best sequel to RoboCop.
Yeah.
Which is not saying much given what that remake is. And and RoboCop 3 doesn't even have Peter Weller, so.
And that first movie is damn near perfect too.
Yeah, I was going to say, boy, talking about perfect movie club, that's in that discussion, I think, in terms of a certain kind of movie being made at a certain time in a certain place. It encapsulates a very specific thing. And for me, honestly, to pivot back to Resurrection, Alien Resurrection captures a time and a place. It's like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer Alien. And look, not a surprise, it was written by Joss Whedon. But it's one of the things that I think he's written that isn't as imminently fucking smug as everything else he does. Because it's an alien movie still. So you get the quippy bullshit, but there was always quippy bullshit in Aliens. So, especially in Aliens. one of the best characters in the movie, you're looking at the catchphrase that is he's known for, right under my name. And that's Bill Paxton. So Alien Resurrection was trying to do that thing. So I think it does it better than anybody gives it credit for. And given where the franchise would ultimately go with something like Covenant, still a better sequel than that.
Well, then I think that's the best way to run with that then. But man, I feel like this one's going to be a debate and a half. Our third question on this one. Can't wait to hear what you say. What is the biggest impact that Alien and the Alien franchise has had on pop culture? And reminder for everybody, because I think this is probably going to be important on this discussion specifically. It doesn't mean that it has to be a specific film, even though it can be, of course. But it can be something like inspiring future filmmakers. It can be like bringing awareness to a genre. It can be like delivering Dan O'Bannon to the world, that sort of thing. So, Chris, what is the biggest impact the Alien franchise has had on pop?
I think the biggest thing that the Alien franchise, the biggest effect that it has had on pop culture is introducing us to a uniquely singular world, unlike pretty much any other sci-fi thing that we've seen, and creating one of, if not, I think, like genuinely one of the best movie monsters ever. It's one of the few movie monsters that showed up at Disney, Disney World, at the great movie ride. Like, they had an alien scene at Disney World. Like, that, if that doesn't tell you the permeation of this pop culture icon that is the Xenomorph, please tell me what would be, because the Alien experience at Walt Disney World and Disneyland was meant to be the Xenomorph from Alien. That's how important to, I think, pop culture Alien, the creature, is. Because again, it's I think it's the most iconic alien other than E.T., maybe? Like, is there a more iconic alien than the Xenomorph?
No.
Especially not one that doesn't get a character name ascribed to it.
Right. Maybe we go to Mac and Me.
Oh, wait! God. Well, that's been made famous by Paul Rudd. It's one of the... Alien and Mac and Me being mentioned in the same breath. The Alien franchise, it's been part of my life my entire life, which is a very weird thing. I was able to see Prometheus in theaters. And look, I bought into the hype of that movie. I was disappointed by it, and I've come around very hard on it because I think it's aged rather well given what's come out since. I don't know what Fede Alvarez's take on Alien is going to be. He's the right person. But I think what makes Alien as a franchise so important is it has given certain filmmakers the opportunity to do things that they otherwise would never have gotten to do, like a James Cameron or a David Fincher, who has not really ever done anything like that since. Cameron has, but not in the same way. I would love to have known what Cameron wanted to do with Aliens if he had actually cared to stick around and do a third movie. I don't think he did. In a lot of ways, Aliens is the end of the story, and Alien 3 is just some fucked up epilogue that somebody dreamed up and slapped on and was like, this is the real end. No, it's not. I think it it also introduced us again to like this idea of a lived in space. It reinforced the idea of a lived in space, which Star Wars did really well. And I think Alien did even better because Alien didn't lean on sci-fi tropes of wizardry and fantasy. Alien is very grounded in reality and it feels lived in. They call them truckers in space for a reason. And that's because that's what the first movie is truckers in space. And that's the thing. When you create a world that is so uniquely yours, you've made a sandbox that looks very appealing for everybody to come play in. And I really wish Alien in the franchise and Disney now, because it's not Fox anymore. I wish that they would let more people play in that sandbox because it's such a fun world to be part of. You have the organic against the human. You have the organic against the mechanical. You have the organic against the organic aliens in some respect with Alien versus Predator. And then on top of that, you have the intrigue of Weyland-Yutani and all these other corporations trying to get a hold of the alien. And it's like the Keystone Cops. They never can. They're always trying to capture the alien and fuck it up every goddamn time. Even in Prometheus, even in Alien Covenant, like the alien as itself is such an iconic creature. They almost acknowledge it within the universe as a perfect organism. And the alien is a perfect creation of H.R. Giger. It is an iconic creation. I think the biggest pop culture thing is the creation of the alien, giving us the Xenomorph. Because the Xenomorph, I got Xenomorph shit on my bookcase over here. I got a glow-in-the-dark Xenomorph. I got alien eggs. I can see them from here. If that doesn't speak volumes to what the alien is as just a character, I don't know what does. And that for me, I think that's the moment in time is the creation of the alien, whatever that means. It starts with alien, but that creation of the Xenomorph is, I think that's the biggest thing.
I have an alien egg that was 3D printed that I use as a pencil holder upstairs.
Yeah, I believe it. Like there's just something about the alien universe that is very appealing to some people. And I like you know what? I like the aesthetic of Alien. That's what it is. The aesthetic of Alien is cool. It's cool. Like the original Aliens movie aesthetic is cool. And I think Aliens aesthetic is cool too. 3 and Resurrection's different story. But it's also just, again, introducing us to a singular narrative and a singular world, more important, and a singular creature that lives within that world that everybody is either vying for, running away from, or fighting. So what about you? What's your answer?
This one, I honestly, the first thing I thought was, yes, the Xenomorph is the clear winner here. But then I started thinking about it. And over the last few months, I've been working on some projects that have brought me a lot of old sci-fi horror, specifically like the 50s, the big boom of like The Creature from Outer Space and It and all these other movies that were foundational sci-fi horror for so many people. But when you think about it, all of those movies take place on planet Earth. And so I think the thing for me that I really see as like the biggest hit is, for me personally at least, I love that it gave us like space horror. We finally have the ability to be scared in space, which changes the way that we can make these movies. And there's hints of that earlier in maybe like 2001, A Space Odyssey, but that's not quite the same thing, obviously. And then the only other thing that I could think of that maybe came before this was Planet of the Vampires, the Mario Bava film, or The Green Slime, directed by Kiji Fukasaku in 68. Both of those movies were in space for a lot of it, but also they brought stuff back to Earth, and it kind of led to the same thing. But something about that first Alien movie making it possible to have true cosmic, away from Earth isolation horror is what I think this franchise delivered in spades. Because without that, there's no Event Horizon, which is one of the greatest movies of all time. There's no Sunshine, which is freaking incredible. There's no, Leprechaun 4 in space, he says jokingly.
Stuff he does not say jokingly, I don't think. He's saying that jokingly after the fact to try to cover up the fact. I mean, Leprechaun in the Hood is not a bad movie either.
Anyways.
Why didn't that make our list of micro or franchises? Leprechaun. Gee.
Sam Rockwell in Moon never would have happened without Alien, of course. There's so many of these movies like Claire Denis' High Life, which is great, which is like kind of like a version of Alien where the human is the villain. And just these movies could not even be fathomed as existing if Alien didn't show that it was possible first. And so popularizing that, I think it's really had an impact on the future of cinema when it comes to pushing the frontier of isolationism and horror in space in a way that most people can't relate to, which is very difficult to portray on screen and get people to feel empathetic to that type of situation. So I love Alien, and I do think that is one of the biggest things for sure.
It's like I said, we both kind of already alluded to it. It's a perfect movie. It does, and perfect movies tend to introduce things into the world that are remembered fondly. Another perfect movie for me, Silence of the Lambs, introduced the world. I mean, look, Manhunter came first. It sure did. But Silence of the Lambs put that character on the map. Another character that's a seminal character in American cinema and then in American literature as well. So yeah, I'm with you. Like, perfect movies introduce things that are damn near perfect. Like the original Star Wars movie is a damn near perfect movie. Introduces us to a universe that, like Alien, still going to this day. So, you know, you don't always hit a home run, but man, if you hit this home run, you hit this home run hard. Yeah. And look, I mean, Ridley Scott, for me, like, this is his best movie. Like, I think for me, and I know that's going to wrangle some people, but it's not going to me, because I like little to very much else of his stuff.
Well, and I think he's made quite a few really great movies. But, I mean, first of all, you mentioned two of them earlier. The fact that you go Alien, Blade Runner, Legend back to back, that's an incredible trilogy of movies to make as a director. That's mind-blowingly good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like you said, like, I am in the minority here, and I know that. Like, there are people that really like a lot of the stuff that he does.
Oh, yeah.
Down. I mean, there are people that would probably get really upset that I said this, because Gladiator is one of those movies. It's just not a movie that resonated with me. And, like, that's really what I feel like with Ridley Scott, is like the only movie of his that resonated with me is Alien. I'm not even a big fan of Blade Runner. I like Blade Runner 2049 more, which I know is like double pin me to the wall now. I'm just, speaking, blasphemy.
Nah, all the film bros are fans,
I mean, that's,
Yep. So now we're on to our last question. And this one, of course, is what do you view as a cinematic bridge to our franchise of Alien? So if there's something else that somebody might already be interested in that could show that they are interested in Alien. And I made you go first a couple times. I'll just throw out mine, because mine is a really, I don't know, it feels like a cheap, silly answer, because I'm not going to name another franchise. I think the big thing I'm going to go with is I appreciate the filmic quality of single location films. And that's what gets me about the Alien franchise. Most of these are fairly isolated. You're stuck in one place, or stuck on a vehicle, or stuck between a vehicle and the short little area that you're exploring, whatever. And so this is going to be like a funny thing to compare it, I guess, but like The Raid. If you like The Raid, you're probably going to like Aliens. It tonally, it's not quite the same, but it's people infiltrating an area and cleaning it of enemies. Like, there's not a lot that is super different there, and it's not the same style of action, but they're both action-oriented films. If you like a lot of these one location, like, haunted house horror movies, you're probably going to like Alien.
I mean, Alien's the best haunted house movie, I think. Like, it's up there.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Like, takes place on a space station, or I guess a giant ship, but whatever. I mean,
the Nostromo.
I'm with you. I mean, I think that definitely is a huge thing, like making, again, because if you're doing space like this, it's just one set and that's it. Like, or if you're going underwater, it's just one set and that's it. I totally agree. I will say my answer, kind of a cheat. We've already talked about Terminator. I think if you're a fan of Terminator, this is a franchise that doesn't do its movies as dirty as Terminator did. I would kind of be surprised if you'd seen Terminator and not these movies, given the direct involvement of James Cameron. I wouldn't say that going on to watch any other Ridley Scott movies, or if you like Ridley Scott, you're going to like Alien. I don't know if that's the case. Like,
no, it's too early in his career, I think.
Yeah, which is a crazy fucking thing to say, given we're talking about a perfect movie here. Like, dude, it's his second.
Right.
It's his sophomore slump. Fuck you, I made Alien. Like,
And his first movie was The Duelist, which isn't a bad movie by any shape.
No, and it's a pretty good adaptation of a pretty good book, a pretty good Joseph Conrad. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like for me, like, Terminator is my answer, just because that's kind of a cheat. But I think if you're a fan of, if you're a fan of Final Girls, Alien is for you. Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection are for you. Because I think for me, Ripley is like the final girl. She is on the same, if there's two heads on this coin, for me, one side is Sigourney Weaver and the other side is Neve Campbell. No, no. I mean, I could see why that would be some people's answer, but for me, it's Neve Campbell.
1978, 1979 is what I'm
right. I mean, that I get, but like for me personally, I think you could still make a case that Neve Campbell would deserve to be there, depending on what era you're coming at horror from. Some people love Jamie Lee Curtis, and she can do no wrong. I'm not saying I don't like Jamie Lee Curtis. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. I like Neve Campbell more in the movies that she's in. Scream resonates more with this guy than Halloween does. That's just the way that it is.
Totally.
And I say the same thing about Alien. Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection have one of the best final girls, period, in Ripley. Ellen Ripley she goes from being the person who you genuinely think is going to die first to the person who survives, kills an alien in her underwear, looks like a badass while doing it, cuts her hair in the next movie, which is one of the most iconic things about her in the first movie. She cuts her hair short, becomes a space dock worker, beats the shit out of aliens in that movie, and then in the third movie makes the choice of choices to try and stop the aliens from continuing to exist. And then in the fourth movie, she's cloned. So as far as I'm concerned, the horror movies, final girls tend to not come back other than Laurie Strode, Sidney Prescott, and Ellen Ripley. Those are the three. Friday the 13th Part 2, the chick from the first movie dies in the first 5 minutes. Like, there's not a lot of follow-through. So if you're a fan of Final Girls and you've never seen the Alien franchise, what are you waiting for?
This is like the epitome of Final Girls.
Right. Like, that the whole franchise up until they rebooted it. And even when they rebooted it, is about Final Girls. I mean, Noomi Rapace, Alien or Prometheus, she's the final girl in that movie. She's really good in that movie. Catherine Waterston, Alien Covenant, final girl in that movie. That movie's not very good. She's not bad in it. It's not a good movie. But yeah, it's all about, I mean, again, if it's horror, it's going to have a final girl trope, and it does. And it does it really well. Which, again, for me, like I said, if you're into horror movies, and more specifically ones that are leaning on the horror trope of final girls, the Alien franchise is for you. I mean, even AVP has a final girl. I know we said we were going to mention AVP. I will mention AVP here. I saw AVP in theaters. It's a fucking dumb movie. It's fun, but it's not it's not Alien. It's like, what if we made aliens with CGI? That's what AVP is. And no colonial marines. Like, I want to know why no one has made another colonial marine. Like, why? Like, why haven't we seen more of that? Like, we have all the video game attempts, but nobody has tried to make another colonial marine movie. That, for me, seems like the biggest missed opportunity here. And like you said, like, I think even if we're talking ways to get people into this universe, if you're into, like, Vietnam stuff and like Vietnam movies, I feel like Aliens is a pretty good, at least the first 2/3 of that movie is an interesting like take on a Vietnam movie. Because like the aliens are guerrilla fighters living in the walls and living in the ceilings, and like we don't know where they are. They could be anywhere at any point. That doesn't sound like what everybody talks about Vietnam being. I don't know what does, but like if you're into Vietnam stuff, Aliens might be up your alley too. So there's a strange connection, but I don't think it's much of a reach.
No, and the thing is, you know, when something is so powerful and all-encompassing as Vietnam, it affected all filmmaking from like 1969 through like 1985. If you really want to dive into any of these, any films released in that like 16-year period, those people were either in the war, their parents were in the war, they were affected greatly by the war. They were 13 when the war was happening, and they saw images from the war on the news and the newspaper and stuff like that. It is such just a giant, intimidating thing when you're looking at that.
Well, and I mean, in Aliens, they went out and they all trained together. They all customized their armor. I mean, they look like they stepped out of Khe-Sanh, really. Like the design of the armor, the design of the helmets are all very reminiscent of Marines in Vietnam. So
right.
I mean, again, if you like war movies and stuff like that, Aliens is probably more your speed. Not much else in the franchise really has the same fun level. I mean, Aliens is a fun movie. I think that's the other thing that we kind of haven't really touched on. Alien is not a fun movie in any stretch of the imagination. Like, it is a scary, tense movie where a woman is being stalked by a massive alien.
It's a slasher, like I said.
And then the second movie is just like a bunch of assholes going down to a planet to kill fucking aliens. It's literally Starship Troopers.
Right.
I mean, but without the jingoistic satire that makes Starship Troopers such a fun movie and book on its. But yeah, I mean, if you're into these things, like, this is definitely your thing. I feel like anybody has seen this. Like, I feel like you've seen such a thing. Like, if you say, like, I love Vietnam War movies and I've never seen Aliens, I'd be like, really? Interesting.
Yeah, that's a big one. Fun franchise. Highly recommend, at least the ones that I've seen, to everybody. It's clear that Chris is passionate about them as well. And yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that it's in pop culture so much, you have already absorbed a lot of it. So it seems odd to keep going on and on, but it's Alien.
I spent almost a decade trying to get the Tyler Stout Alamo Drafthouse Alien poster. And one of the years they did the flat file sale, I managed to get one. It is one of my favorite posters. It is hanging in the hallway of our house. That is, I have 2 posters downstairs that have never changed. And it is an Alien and a Predator from Alamo Drafthouse. And they are opposing posters facing each other. That is how much I love this franchise, subconsciously or consciously. The design choices, just everything about it. If we ever do a Predator episode, I'm not going to have as much love for that franchise for a number of reasons, not because of the quality of the movies, but I think to put a button on it, almost all the movies in the Alien franchise are worth watching, even the bad ones. And not a lot of franchises can say that. Frankly, most can't. There's like one movie in the Alien franchise that I would say, you can skip it, and that's Covenant. I think everything else, I've made more or less a case as to why it's worth at least spending a little bit of time with it. Even Alien 3, which is just a weird movie that David Fincher directed, which if that's not something that imminently excites you, that's a David Fincher Alien movie. Like, I don't know what would. So, because he's never going to do that again. Just like I don't think he's ever going to do Seven again. So, you know, I think it's just, Alien is such a weird thing. And I'm so glad we got to cover it because I've never really gotten to talk long form about it. Only whenever we've covered, the show's been going long enough. We covered Alien Covenant, I'm pretty sure. But I mean, again, it's like 2017 and I didn't enjoy it and I still don't. So this is like, to speak poetically and wax lovingly about a franchise that, is a big part of my pop culture makeup. So,
well, maybe after Romulus, we'll have to give a little update on what we both thought and do like a little 10-minute catch up on it.
Episode on Romulus, and you signed yourself up for it at this point because you've already said, I'm going to watch all the movies ahead of time. It's like, you best be damned if I'm not asking you questions about how you feel about all of them.
It's necessary. And to be honest, at this point, like, not that my kids are able to watch anything, but that first Alien movie, I think, is pretty much ready for at least my oldest to watch, if not both kids. I mean, they've both already seen Jurassic Park, and we're good with that.
You think the chest burster scene is comparable to Jurassic Park?
I mean, that first Jurassic Park movie, you see a dinosaur literally eat a guy off of a toilet.
Yeah, but it's a CGI dino. It's in a CGI guy.
But it's one of the best-looking CGI dinosaurs ever.
I'm not bemoaning or besmirching that. There is something about that scene in Alien that just... there's nothing that CGI can change about that fucking... that all of that. I mean, I would love to know what, like, your kids think about it. Because, like, outside of that one scene, it's a relatively bloodless movie. Like, there's not... it's like everything is just the implication.
Well, that, and there's no nudity. There's no, like, there's a handful of swear words, not too much.
Well, there's no nudity, but Sigourney Weaver at the end.
Well, there's no sexual objectification or sexual acts displayed.
Male gaze.
Yeah, those gays just walking wherever they want. That was a terrible joke.
I thought it was funny.
Anyways, Chris, why don't you share with everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, when I'm not sitting and talking about Alien, you can find me and everything I work on over at weirdingwaymedia.com, which is named for Dune. Apparently people didn't know that. I didn't like the new Dune. Apparently they don't understand why I didn't like it. I would reiterate, weirdingwaymedia.com. That's where you can find everything I work on. When I'm not being an intellectual bully and telling people how they're wrong, you can find me on Patreon/CultureCast, where $10 a month you can listen to me, the Projection Booth's Mike White, and Richard Haddam of many things, including Richard Haddam's Paranormal Bookshelf, DC Titans, and the writer of the Mothman Prophecies. We cover James Bond, another franchise that we'll inevitably cover at some point on this show. Once a month. So that's where you can find everything that I work on. What about you, Ryan?
I am on all social media under the name The Disconnected. I'm also everywhere under Someone's Favorite Productions. Got a lot going on. If you are interested in physical media, check out The Disconnected everywhere. I do a live show every Thursday going over the announcements for the week, including weekly interviews with industry professionals and I also write a monthly and sometimes bi-monthly zine that you can purchase in a paperback physical format on Amazon. You can also get a digital file if you want with all the links embedded, so you can tap it and go to all the releases and purchase them without ever leaving to another website. Just go through a zine. That's pretty awesome. Check that out by looking up the Physical Media Advocate on Amazon. And until next time, we hope you check out our next episode, that you continue to push the boundaries of your